Welcome. The stories I'm about to tell you for the rest of my life aren't just one-offs or merely legends. No, in fact, it is a saga and a series of epics told and passed down from generations to generations, from the very beginning to the final age. From the legends, prophecies, stories, epics, histories, and societies I'm about to tell you is something you should be concerned with yourself with and to be familiar, as over time the stories are told, the more clear and understandable they come. But just like in the beginning, truths are lost, and what are merely told are either white lies or legends, or even possibly myths. But that is not to say that everything that is seemed to be told is false. So step right up, come along, relax. Listen to this while you sleep, listen to this while you read, listen to this while you eat, listen to this wherever you may be, and enjoy, as I am the oralist of Elvenia, and these are the tales of my people. Long ago, in the void of everything that was dark and empty, was nothing. Until, suddenly, this strange darkness would create the beginning of everything that is known to be made. This beginning would be known to us as the Age of Creation. In this age, four beings were formed out of matter and energy. Eventually, these four later became the forming gods of the world. Their names would be Utopia, the god of paradise and hope; Dystopia, god of torment and destruction; Midtopia, the god of everything in between; and Elvenia, the goddess of the world. The first three gods were different, as each created their own dimensions to live in. In the first dimension was left Utopia, and in her dimension it was called Paradise. In the second dimension, Midtopia created the Limbo, and in the third dimension, Dystopia created the Torment. But in the fourth dimension, Elvenia stayed in one place with stability and pure balance, as all three of the gods created their own worlds in their own dimensions and universes. The first god, Utopia, built a world of paradise in her dimension, filled with lush and fresh flora in the gardens that she has dug herself. Flowers would spring to life, and animals would walk together in open fields to pasture the grass, and the forest produced all sorts of magic and manna. The sky was never cloudy or damp, birds sang in angelic songs, and fruit never tasted sour or expired. She made her world a garden of pleasure and paradise for all who deserve good shall or desire good. The second god, Dystopia, built his world of torment. In his dimension, every garden was covered in the smell of death, and the grass was as sharp as spears. Instead of clean, drinkable water, molten magma and dirty blood ran through the canals, like how one might run through a valley. The air and clouds were always miserable, always blood red, and always seemed to rain pain. And the general atmosphere, while being undesirable in temperature, was always cold, reserved for the undesirable of all people. This wasn't a garden of pleasure and paradise. while the god Midtopia created a calm storm. There was nothing. There was just endless clouds twirling in a smooth flowing manner. There was fruit, but it was tasteless. There was fire, but it didn't burn. And then there was the Stormkeeper, the person who would decide on your character by your merits and by your past adventures. There was no pain. There was no delight. It wasn't a paradise or torment, as this world was not made to cause us a cycle of pain or a garden of pleasure. It was a place to reflect on your past deeds and to determine whether you were who you say you were. The fourth god, Elvenia, stayed in her place, as she was happy with what she had. She soon realized that she can create something way better than any of her counterparts can create. And so began her 18-month journey to create the world as she had wanted it to be. In the first month, she created the cores and layers. In the second, she created the atmosphere and air and trees. The third month, she created the oceans and all the flora that needed to support the trees. On the fourth month, she made the animals, the birds, the fishes, the cattle, the game, the basins, the bugs, the wild animals, and the pack animals. And on the fifth month, she created the first elven people. Then, from the sixth to the 14th month, made the other 8 elven races. These were the regular elves, the high elves, the dark elves, the deep elves, the snow elves, the wood elves, the sea elves, and the sun elves. In the 15th to the 17th month, she added the seeds, the fruit, and the grain into all of her creation so they can go and build their own communities and societies. And in the last 18th month, she has rested. She was delighted about creating the elven race, where each race had their own unique culture and outlook, each ability and each unique identity, the ability of free will, or so it was thought. And as the four gods settled in their own dimensions and worlds, each promised each elven race that if they do good, they would go to Utopia. If they did bad, they would go to Dystopia. If they were in the middle or did both or nothing, they would go to the final trial, known as the Midtopia. But one group of elves decided to choose the wrong path of life and to spread the word of dystopia all over the world. They went in caves, they partook in barbarous acts, worshipped false gods, such as the dystopian children. They also cannibalized their fellow elves. Their behavior were no more than deranged animals. Elvenia, seeing this, was angered by their actions, and so cursed them. As she cursed them, their skin went rotten, their bodies stretched out of proportion, their spines were hunched, their minds degraded, and finally their voice reduced to no mere noises of grunts. In doing so created the final elven race, known as the Cursed Elves. Dystopia, seeing his fellow followers turned into deranged, barbaric animals, sought out to turn them into his loyal soldiers, and so the Cursed Elves became the armies of the Dark Sovereign himself. And so when his army trained and crafted weapons of destruction, so did his ambition. Dystopia wanted to rule all 4 dimensions and become the ruler of all that is dark and horror. When adventurers and travelers spoke to other tribals, they talked about a great unstoppable force of death and destruction crashing down upon each village they see and destroying everything they sought to find. During the March of Darkness, two siblings, Tacticus and Stratogalia, sought out to find any neighbouring tribes that would aid them to stop this devilish army from consuming the entire world and plunging it into an eternal abyss of torment. They succeeded in getting 5 tribes together, each with their own unique talents: archery, spear-making, horse-taming, sailing, and leather crafts. United by Tacticus and Stratogalia, they led the first united elven army into battle. When the cursed army of Dystopia clashed with the elven army of Stratogalia and Tacticus, they would partake in the first battle in history. Not just a battle between two factions, but as the annals of time continue, they partook in a significant role in the first battle between good and evil. The clash was intense, and it lasted for 6 hours, but during this time, Tacticus and Stratogalia devised plans during the battle, to which would put them on the path of victory, as they lead the united elven army on demolishing the cursed elven army of Dystopia, beating back his inevitable plan of total domination. Dystopia, in a fit of rage, went back to his dimension of torment, with as much abandoning his cursed elven army, with a little as much ordered them to regroup and rebuild. And as the ensuing chaos ravaged the land, the cursed armies disbanded and went their separate ways. Little did the siblings know, their endeavour was so significant that an entire calendar was created. As the second they won, it was 0 years after the first battle of good and evil in the Age of Creation. This new calendar worked like this. Each 48 hours was a day. Each 9 days was 1 week, 6 days of work and 3 days of rest. And as there was 6 to 8 weeks in a month, as there were 18 months a year. As the siblings rejoiced, they've agreed to migrate northwest of the battlefield, as now they deemed their lands cursed, and each of the tribals didn't want to go back to the tribes, as they found unity in one another. As they finally landed in their destination, they formed one united tribe, something bigger than a tribe. They called this place the city. As the city was being built, a problem arose between Stratogalia and Tacticus. The two siblings couldn't agree in what to call the city or even how to rule it. Each sibling had their own vision. The sister wanted to create a city-state with its principle of people rule and public affairs being its #1 priority. The brother argued, stating that sometimes if the people are indecisive or uneducated, it can cause mass instability. So in the brother's vision, Tacticus envisioned an everlasting kingdom which prioritized stability at all costs, no matter what it had to do to achieve it, as long-term stability was better than short-handed progress. The two siblings carried on fighting, even when building the city and creating its functions. Elvenia decided to put the two siblings into 3 tests. The first test was a simple game of patience. One of the two siblings will stand on top of a hill and we'll see which hill is favoured by the birds. On Stratogalia's hill, she had 6 birds fly past her in the first 2 minutes, which for a split second written meant that she was favoured by time and patience. But soon 15 birds flew slowly towards Tacticus, which demonstrated that, also with time, the land will slowly be bigger and powerful. The second test was of crafts. Stratogalia knew the craft of art and carved out many toys and idols, as well as the first use of the paint, when she created the prolium, using a mixture of insect eggs and the red eureka to create red paint to depict their struggles against the army of darkness. Tacticus, on the other hand, had the craft of tool-making, creating spears, hammers and axes. Spears for the hunts and wars, hammers for the building and crafting, and axes for the resource gathering. They were both tied in the struggles of crafts and arts, but each intention was clear and repeated: a rule of people as number one priority, or the idea that a city shall be grand and stable at all costs. The third test was never conducted, as both siblings were getting aggressive to one another each day. Eventually, in the town square, as they were discussing about what should be used as trade, went from a battle of raising voices to an eventual scuffle, during which Stratogalia grabbed her brother's spear and struck it in his own heart, the same spear he had in the first battle of good and evil. As it pierced his heart, he fell on the ground and bled out. In horror, Stratogalia realized what she has done and burst out in tears as the people cheered her on as the new head chief. As she whimpered and wept for her brother, she realized that a world divided is a world that cannot stand. So in the waning years of the Age of Creation, she single-handedly created the city's code of law, created the city's government known as the Senate, and the 2 consulates. She created the idea of currency and class systems, education, and the citizen soldier, the smithers and the farmers, and most importantly, she named the city after herself, the city of Stratogalia, which was ruled by the public, which eventually evolved into the Republic of Stratogalia. She ruled as first consul, and as for the other consulate, Brute Lucius as the second. Each acted as a balance of power to prevent what she did to her brother. She was the head of the country, and the other one was the head of the government. Her own creation of the Republic inspired many tribes of the elves to gather around and create their own city-states. These city-states will soon become kingdoms and republics. These kingdoms and republics began to rise and expand, and when Stratogalia died in 79 years after the first battle in the Age of Creation, during which she had served 20th term as first consulate, it marked the end of the Age of Creation. Her rule was filled with culture and inspiration. The new consulates made a statue in her honor, and after the final dirt was placed on top of her grave, ended the Age of Creation, and thus began the New Age, the Age of Rising Kingdoms. And so, fellow listener, ends the tale that which I have bestowed upon you today. In our next tale, we shall talk about the prophecies, and how these prophecies would eventually shape the years and annals of time of Elvenia.